Call this meeting 2021-2022 budget workshop to order. County Manager.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Chairman, board members, county elected officials, judges, department heads, and staff. Welcome. What a year. Highs and lows, crazy trends, abnormal challenges. Must say, though, on a personal note, it's been a rewarding and an exciting year for me. So thank you. So today, the intent is to review with you the fiscal status of the county and to lay out a vision for a 4-year financial plan to emerge from this pandemic and build on our experience and strength. Please note as we go along that we will draw a distinction between recurring sustainable revenue and non-recurring one-time grant stimulus funds. Having said that, I truly and firmly believe that due to the sound and strong leadership of the board and the dedication of the county employees, the county is in good fiscal health despite the numerous challenges. Our expenses for 2021, fiscal year 2021, are projected to be within budget, and our budgeted contingency fund is better than previous years. Additionally, in FY 2021, we achieved the following: the completion of the Law and Justice Center, Phase 1, completion of the Kingman Library expansion. We also oversaw the final settlement of the Transwestern Pipeline, and the animal shelter moved closer to construction. With that said, we experienced some setbacks, including an uptick in healthcare claims cost due to the COVID-19 pandemic. That was in the order of about $1.5 million. We also recognize that non-recurring federal funds, known as the CARES Act, enabled the county to cover the general fund portion of the public health and a portion of public safety from March to November of 2020, and with that, it lessened the financial burden of the pandemic on the county. So looking ahead to fiscal year 2022 and beyond, our vision is a multi-year financial strategy extending over 4 years with a focused and a practical budget plan which identifies the county needs and provide a sound but flexible financial roadmap to meet them. To that end, in this budget, we have laid out for your consideration and approval a strong, balanced approach to sustainable, recurring revenue sources and stream that will allow the board to govern and will fund the necessary county services. Additionally, the budget plan is developed with a responsible, balanced approach and good understanding of sound fiscal practices. It consists of both property tax and sales tax. It will provide a multi-year financial plan with 2 dials to allow the board the optimal flexibility to govern with the tools necessary to honor commitments made to county residents, provide the necessary services mandated by statutes and required for good quality of life, as well as deliver the infrastructure needed to sustain and enhance future growth and economic development in our county. We also recognize the non-recurring federal funds that are in the pipeline, which is known as the American Rescue Plan Act, in the order of $40+ million that is infused into the county funds, and we envision working very closely with the board to get guidance in order to implement those funds and invest into eligible programs and projects with long-lasting benefits and good return on investment for county residents. With that said, this budget strategy recognizes that while county financial status is healthy, including a stronger budgeted contingency fund, we continue to face substantial unfunded liabilities, such as the PRS, that's the Public Retirement System, the EORP, and the South Point Power Plant tax litigation, as well as facilities critical to county mandated functions, such as Legal Services Center, sheriff's substations, morgue, and the medical examiner facility associated with it, among others. Finally, I would like to acknowledge our county employees and express appreciation and gratitude for their hard work and dedication, which is demonstrated daily in performance their work. I can tell you and assure you, Mr. Chairman and board members, that our county employees take a great deal of pride in their work and are delivering outstanding services to county residents under difficult conditions and often while understaffed and shorthanded. This proposed budget includes a 1% of total salary budget for merit increases based on performance. In closing, I, along with the county management team, are excited about our future and are laser focused to work with the board and staff to deliver the best and most efficient services to county residents, as well as to keep in Mojave County as a great place to live and work. Now I will turn it over to our County Finance Director, Coral Lloyd, and her team to present the proposed fiscal year 2022 budget plan and details. Thank you for listening to me. Coral, it's all yours.
Good morning, Supervisor Johnson or Chairman Johnson and other supervisors. We've got quite a bit to go through this morning. There were many new initiatives coming through, so I'd like to walk you through basically a PowerPoint similar to other years so that we can review each one of those so nothing takes you by surprise. The packet that we've put together is pretty thick, however, really those items are covered within the budget message. So I appreciate your time and efforts and energy as we walk through these initiatives. So essentially, as Sam just mentioned, what is actually proposed, the main point and focus of our discussion today is the 4-year budget plan, which provides a lot of flexibility for the board to adjust the dial, if you will, for any changes that you would see in this next 4 years. What it really will do is make an attempt to reduce the property tax rate by the equivalent of bringing forth a 1/4 cent sales tax, which equates to about 36 cents of the property tax rate. So that would reduce the rate from $1.90 to about $1.54 over the next 4 years. And it would generate about $8 million in sales tax for each of those years, except the first year of implementation, which obviously it would be just a partial year, so there would only be a partial collection in the first year. Resources that would be made available from implementing this plan could be used for, then what we're recommending is that we begin to make significant contributions to PSPRS to start paying down the liability. In contributing basically $10 million, a little bit more than $10 million, but an estimated $10 million over the next 4 years, it would reduce the county's contribution rate from about 55% down to about 35%. And essentially, that would reduce the annual cost by about $1 million a year for the life of the term of the unfunded liability. That life right now is about 16 years. It would also provide additional resources to cash fund several projects over the period of years, with about $9 million dedicated toward a legal service center, $5 million for sheriff substation or stations, and about $5 million for a county morgue. When we go through this, seeing the numbers then on the next page, you will see that the resources coming in through the sales tax are estimated to be, or projected to be, about $31.5 million over the next 4 years. And combined with the capital projects and the payments toward the PSPRS unfunded liability, total about $29.5 million. So of the $2 million remaining, because we are reducing property tax rate, then it is anticipated that we would need to keep about $2 million for continued operating costs during that time period. So some of the assumptions that go into this projection on both the revenue side and the expense side, I just want to cover that it does include a continued recovery with a positive trend, although the projections that I've used are more conservative than those projections that are currently used in the state budget. Overall, between year 1 and year 4, it averages out to be about a 2.5% increase in the revenue growth. It also assumes that assessed values will continue to increase, although not as robustly as they currently are. And that's basically looking at the new construction and assuming that it is not going to be sustainable at the current levels that it is going right now, and that we would allow for new construction to come on the rolls, and that any new property tax that is realized, even though we're reducing the rate, any new values that are included in there are actually from the new construction portion of property tax. So giving you a table with the numbers on it to view. Over the next 4 years, this indicates that we would be reducing the rate again by the 36 cents. It is about an 18-19% drop in the property tax rate. And again, as you can see, that even though the rate drops, the property tax would stay fairly flat because of new construction. The state shared revenue projections that I've used, you can see across that row, using a 1.6% change, a 2.4, 2.6, 3.5. So I think that that's fairly conservative. The user fees we've kept flat. The PILT, which is the federal monies, basically keeping that flat, as well as the transfers into the fund. Overall then, including the sales tax, we would go from next year's projection of $105 million in revenue for the general fund up to about $113 million in year 4. Again, with a 2.5% overall average. On the expense side, I included for future years essentially a 2.5% increase in expenses. And you can see, based upon the previous slide where our revenues are flowing, and then this slide indicating the expenses are remaining below revenue, but if the revenue projection is less in terms of growth compared to the expenses going up at 2.5% solid, then in year 4, we're fairly close to just breaking even if all of these assumptions remain the same. And clearly they change, actual changes over a period of time. And it's not a real rosy outlook. So it certainly could improve upon this than what I'm projecting. And certainly if we reduce the PSPRS cost by $1 million, then that would be an additional savings here. And I've not factored into the projection those types of opportunities. Again, using the flexibility of this plan, that we recognize bringing forward the projection, that you're the decision makers. You end up having to be responsible for those decisions, even those that we recommend that you make. And so we know that adjustments may occur, and that could include things like extending one of the project or more of the project timelines. That we may have to dial down the payments to PSPRS if funding fell short of the projections or other events occurred and the board decided not to, I would say, strategize to attend to those events through a property tax change. And if so, that the tax rate itself may need to go up or down within a given year, or other ideas that you all may have. It is intended for the resolution that would be presented to the board to include language that would not really prevent, but curtail, because we can't prevent something that's allowed by statute, but curtail a future board from, or this board, from dramatically increasing property tax rates, at least above that T&T rate, unless there were, let's say the tax settlements occurred, and that was so significant that we needed the funds immediately to do that. That might be an action that you would need to modify what we're proposing. It could be that construction falls significantly or the assessed values fall significantly and the T&T rate goes up. In order for us to continue to meet just operational standards, then I would estimate that we might have to take the rate up a little bit, but the intention is to reduce the rate by 36 cents by the value of the sales tax over these next 4 years, and then prevent dramatic increases. The statutes related to property tax already prevent Board of Supervisors anywhere from increasing the tax rates beyond a 15% increase. This is primary property tax. Beyond a 15% increase in any year without a unanimous vote of the board. So there are some stipulations already by statute, and we would certainly intend or have received the message that we would like to put some parameters around this, so essentially so that the county is not receiving, here's the sales tax, $8 million, and then take back up the property tax by the same amount, and then we would have 16 million. So unless that was a determination that the effective way of doing that would be pay off PSPRS in a year and a half or something like that, but that is not our intention whatsoever. For the total county budget and what is included in other funds, we have a budget presented about $539 million, and it includes some hefty numbers right at the bottom of this for the ARPA, the American Rescue Act plan of $42 million. And then because of the unknowns, we put in an extra $100 million in unawarded appropriations. For example, what could go in there and modify that? We learned yesterday from the library director that the library stands to receive not a significant amount, but about $20,000 potentially next year in ARPA monies just for the library. We know that the emergency rental assistance program, phase 2, is going to be available, and that will have monies that we've not currently assigned. So there are other items, as you all know, that are still pending federal acts, federal legislation, either approved or not approved, that may also influence that number. So we've got hopefully enough in there to at least account for it this first year. The next year's budget, as mentioned previously and associated with the payments and use of the sales tax money, if approved, $5 million would be utilized the first year toward PSPRS. I'm assuming that the first year of sales tax would amount to about $5 million. So that first year we would essentially use the infusion of that funding to begin to pay down the PSPRS. From the carryover monies as well, we've got an initial $1.5 million in design and initial costs of the Legal Services Center, $1 million for the sheriff's substation or stations. The one that we've identified as being the priority is the one located in Lake Havasu as the first one. And however that is determined to roll out, we wanted to make sure that we at least included an appropriation to get you off the ground with that. It does include an $8.8 million contingency, and then all of the other funds represent the remaining $278 million, of which a great deal of that is other construction and capital investment. So in moving on to the, what's different besides the plan, but what is different in next year's budget? Similar to past years, we've included initiatives if they were budget neutral, if they were funded with non-general funds or recurring resources in the general fund, if we needed to because of replacement needs, if it was a mandated reason, we've rolled in items previously approved by the board, or any increase or anticipated increase in contract terms, and then market costs. This year we've included what we're calling county-wide initiatives. And the reason for this is really listed here, that the board is presented over and over requests for reclassifications that arise from departments when their employees achieve certain education, certifications, or demonstrate competencies. They're working outside of their job class and items like that. Now, the board has in the past approved several series, and it has certainly benefited the county and provided administration ease. So examples of a successful item were the series progressions for the appraisers and the cadastral mapping technicians in the assessor's office when those certifications and competencies were achieved. So for this budget, we've got 4 other series progression initiatives included. In looking at the policies about this, the first item of business then would be our recommendation to be able to do this, to roll these out, is just a very simple change in the language under the Personnel Policies and Procedures, section 2.2.e.1. And it would just be modified to state that the individuals, and I'll just read this, the individuals hired into such positions may be moved to the appropriate classification when the acceptable qualifications and or requirements are met. So it is not a uniform blanket, we're allowed to become an attorney 3 or 4. No, they need to be able to, the department will work with HR in establishing criteria. Those criteria will need to be met and then documented that this has been achieved. So it is not just an open door policy. It will be very similar to what the assessor has done more recently. The benefits of adopting progression initiatives, it provides the departments and the county the ability to attract and retain highly valuable employees that we've spent a lot of money, made a lot of investment, and as have the employees, in advancing their job skills, their knowledge, and it will allow them an opportunity to advance through a series rather than leaving one job, going to another, or leaving the county altogether. The series progressions would be reported on the monthly county manager report, similar to the other actions that are reported and exactly like the other series that you've approved in prior years. So the first one is the attorney series. We talked a lot about this. You've seen a lot of actions over the years, certainly budget years, where this would allow attorneys to progress from attorney 1 up to attorney 4 as they meet the criteria and benchmarks. The next initiative is for the administrative specialist series. This would primarily be used in development services and finance initially as we roll those out. They are budget neutral in those departments because of increased revenue, split funding, and some cost reductions. It would cause a slight increase in expenses in the DEQ and flood control divisions. And then we're recommending that we have a placeholder in general administration of about $50,000 because there may be other positions not discussed during the preliminary budget discussions that are similar in responsibility, education, training, political awareness, and things like that, that may need to roll into this initiative. And then the last two are an office series initiative and a building inspector plans examiner series. For the office series, the departments that we would roll money into for the current year, for the next year, would be the assessor, recorder, community services, development services, and the legal advocate offices. Again, they're only available for department directors to utilize for employees as they advance through the benchmarks and criteria established. Similarly, the building inspector and plans examiner, and I won't read all of that to you, but they're all quite similar. The second county-wide initiative, as Sam had mentioned, is a merit pay initiative. This would be the value of 1% of the salary budget for each department that would be set aside. We've put aside $465,000 in general administration. It includes the payroll taxes affiliated with it, and it would allow high performers to be recognized with merit pay. And our discussions have included that the employee would need to be eligible. Department director would need to demonstrate documentation showing that the employee created a procedure or idea that reduced costs or improved the bottom line, that the employee is recognized as a leader within the job role, whatever that job role is, and that the employee worked outside of the job role performing a special act or a service that exceeded the expectation. It would also be limited to no greater than 3%. Any recommendations for that would be reviewed by the county manager, HR, and then also finance for our portion to ensure that it is within the budget appropriations, and then for the other two in order to ensure that the recommendations are meeting the criteria. The final two then factors on this are that to comply with the state law in regard to county merit pay, it would be included in the base year salary, and there's not doing so is an entirely different administrative process that was unbelievable. So that would be our recommendation, is that it would be allowed, the 1%, if or whatever the amount were, up to 3% would be allowed to roll into the base pay. And then, of course, any actions would be reported on the county manager's report. And there are some other departments, as we go through those, that have initiatives that are outside the scope of the merit pay, and if approved, their items would also be reported to you as they have been in the previous years. So getting to the heavy hitters first, the sheriff's office. The increase in their new initiatives for next year, about $1.4 million. The bulk of that is from adding 6 more sworn deputy positions and all of the affiliated expenses. This does align with the sheriff's strategic plan, so I'm sure none of you are surprised to see this initiative before you. They've noted that achieving the benchmarks in their plan is a step forward in making their working conditions as safe as possible. And they specifically have noted in their initiative that the current staffing levels are very thin, and that deputies routinely work by themselves and handle calls that would normally justify a minimum of 2 people to respond. So their initiative is requesting to add additional people in order to improve their conditions and provide better coverage. I'm sure many other factors, but those are the main topics. They also have a compression and compensation element for each of their divisions. I've noted them independently so that you can see the impact of that. This would be for eligible employees in the sheriff's office, about $431,000, $255,000 in the jail, $27,000 in animal control, and then the other grants would be about $43,000. They have several other elements between training, equipment, and capital purchases, and I won't necessarily walk you through each one of these unless you want me to, but they've increased the budget by $62,000, or maybe it's $62,000 is included in there. I'm not sure which now, but $62,000 is in there for additional training that includes investigator training, examples, leadership development, swiftwater rescue, firearms, forensic training, a whole host of training that they included in their backup documentation. They have about $42,000 to transition their portable radio replacement cost from one of the fee funds to the general fund as a result of declining fees. They've got about $15,000 for sights for SWAT team pistols that could be used in both low light conditions and with the use of gas masks. They have trajectory kits to aid the investigators with shooting crimes. There's about $1,700 in the jail budget for additional phones in order to separate the workstations in that area. The animal control budget doesn't have a lot in it, but it's about $7,500 in total for dog traps, and then upgrades to their phones to allow them to be smartphones so that they can also use them as cameras. Under their capital initiative, they need to increase their licenses in order to gain access into the criminal justice management system. They have $5,000 as they did in the prior year, and in each of the next 3 years they plan to put in $5,000 to finish outfitting their HMMVs, the Humvees. They have 5 of those. To date, 2 have been outfitted and are ready to go, and they've got the 3 remaining. They've got some Homeland Security grants intended to pay for some additional workstations in the dispatch center and a highway safety grant for intoxilizer units. And that essentially covers the initiatives in the sheriff's office, and theirs was pretty robust, as it always is. It's a large department with a lot of coverage, and hopefully the others won't take quite as long. But I do appreciate your attention as well as all the audience as we go through those. And moving on to the legal side of the county, both the county attorney and the legal defense services, they would participate in the attorney job series progression. There are some retention increases for their office staff, and this is noted that the office staff, particularly in the county attorney's office, have to have specialized training or certification, and I've listed some of the systems that are there. The county attorney's office more thoroughly listed system access in their initiative, but overall it includes a $74,000 price tag in the general fund and then $10,000 in other funds. They have some money in the budget as well through the initiative process to reclass the administrative supervisor to a legal services administrator based upon a review of the job duties that are being performed, the complexity, an expansive responsibility, and working outside of the current class. The county attorney's office also is requesting to transfer funding of an investigator position that we have funded right now in an enhancement fund. The funds, again, they've been decreasing and are necessary for other mandated costs. So they're asking that we move this back to the general fund over the next 2 years with a total impact of $64,000 between the 2 years. The legal defense side, again, participation in the attorney job series and the office series. For the courts, the impact of new initiatives is almost $400,000. The Superior Court requests to add 5 bailiff positions and then reclassify their current security position from a range 5 to a 10. The reasons have been noted in prior years, and we've discussed this a few years at least, but it is to comply with the standards that have been adopted by the AOC and general security needs. They've also asked for court commissioner increases with a general fund impact of about $30,000. They've noted the reasons why that I've placed before you, and I'll just walk through some of that. That the court is noting that all of the commissioners have extensive years of experience in not just the county, but in private sector as well. They've gone through all of the Supreme Court training, so they're able, each one of them are able to conduct all of the hearing types. In comparing to other counties across the state, generally other counties have noted that they hire the commissioners in at the rate that's allowed by statute, which is 90% of an elected judge. And Mojave County has been starting them historically at 80%. So this would move those commissioners' compensation up, and not all to the 90%, I would add, but it would give each one of them a little bit of a bump. The court also noted then that they believe that this is necessary in order to pay a competitive wage, recognizing the responsibility and knowing that the experience that is provided is necessary and they want to keep it. They also included increases for the judicial assistants. I see a typo that the impact is not $74,000 for that one as well. In fact, I think the JAs, yeah, they're budget neutral. So the $74,000 that's on the top of this is associated with the prior, I don't actually know what that is. I don't know, looks like a typo. So I'll have to look that up. It is a budget neutral initiative based upon savings and personnel changes that they've had. They compared their case filings with Coconino, Pinal, Yavapai, and Yuma, and Mojave County is noted as having the second highest filings processed. The JAs are responsible for learning and understanding a wide variety of cases, and I won't read all of those to you, but it's at least a list to demonstrate that it's a pretty expansive list that the courts handle. In moving to the clerk of the Superior Court's budget, there isn't a lot in there this year. It does include, though, a $20,000 transfer of the maintenance of their dock storage system from their automation funds back over to the general fund, and then a carryover of some equipment purchases. For the probation department, this includes market adjustments for the division heads and the deputies. We're talking about 4 positions, essentially, that, again, a comparison was done across the county and other courts, and the intent that the courts have always had is essentially to keep their personnel on equal footing with respect to salary and title as what the county does. And they've noted that it would reduce internal competition among staff and also compression issues in the department. In the juvenile detention area, there's a no impact cost to their initiative. And again, I won't read the whole thing, but they're beginning a program, a pilot of a program called the Hope Garden Substance Abuse Program. It is essentially state-funded through the Arizona Supreme Court, and it provides counseling and family services, counseling and therapeutic services to the juvenile located here in Mojave County. It includes a probation clinician, again funded by state monies, and depending on the success of this and the need within the community, they would like to operate additional cohorts or additional sessions of this in the future years. The justice courts have kind of a minor initiative. This is really kind of a housekeeping item. But basically, when the Lake Havasu Justice Court was consolidated with Lake Havasu City, the pro tem costs were included in the city contract, so the county paid that through the general fund. When the deconsolidation occurred, the pro tem costs were moved over to a fee fund instead of remaining in the general fund. And because of reduced fines and reduced fees that we've experienced, particularly this past year, there's not enough funding in there to keep that fund structurally balanced, and we need to move that back to the general fund. So really, that was where it probably should have been anyway, and it was missed and placed over into this fee fund. And that really covers it for the courts overall. So moving on to some of the other elected official areas, the assessor initiatives include step increases for a couple of their employees that they may be approaching and achieving a designation of an IAAO, which is their professional certification for their appraisal work. It does represent a significant amount of time and effort provided by these employees to work toward the technical proficiencies and gain the knowledge and the experience to achieve this certification. In the state of Arizona, there are only a few individuals, and I believe also nationwide, to achieve the designation. And in fact, the Department of Revenue uses that designation as the sole determinant in whether an appraiser can achieve a level 3 certification. So it certainly is a feather in their cap for achieving this recognition. They're also requesting some part-time money for a temporary position as a systems analyst to work on some of the other projects and items that they have kind of on their list within their department. The treasurer's office includes an initiative similar to what the treasurer's proposed in prior years to utilize savings combined with, in this case, the countywide 1% initiative to provide merit-based increases throughout the year. This would be budget neutral. I mean, the amount is $77,000. The way that they are proposing to pay for that is the elimination of 2 vacant positions, making the initiative then budget neutral. In the recorder's office, they have at least 1 and possibly more employees that would be eligible to participate in the Office Series initiative. She has also asked for salary increases to recognize the 2 elective positions, and then we've provided some descriptions there of the reason why that this is being requested based upon the knowledge, responsibility, and it is a budget neutral item covered with existing revenue through the recorder's office. Moving on, the medical examiner, we've left the same, but this is just a reminder, so to speak, that the contract is up for procurement, and we anticipate the discussions will be coming forth to you shortly. In economic development, there's an initiative. So this one is a bit different, but an initiative to transfer 25% of new construction property tax to that enterprise fund. So the impact next year is about $200,000. And if it were to occur over the next 4 years, it's estimated that it would total about $800,000. That fund, as you know, was established a few years ago, and it, at the time, provided resources with an effort to attract a new business. At least in that case, we did one new business, and then others have come through the pipeline. A few others have been through the pipeline in that fund, but attract new businesses to the area and create jobs that are above average pay with health benefits. And it also provides new infrastructure, taxable infrastructure, and not just for the county, but the school districts, the community college, the fire districts, everyone that may benefit from an increased assessed value base in their district. And then it also provides other ancillary business opportunities. So again, the example, at least on the forefront of my mind, was the Dot Foods development agreement that was entered into in partnership with the Arizona Commerce Authority. It brought 125 jobs that the average wage was above what we currently had. It met the conditions for the health benefits. It provided a lot of capital investment, a huge facility. The economic impact analysis that was completed on that project concluded that there were another 40 jobs in the communities and almost $2 million at these other locations, not Dot Foods, but other business locations that were realized during that time period, and about $600,000 in additional tax revenue, property tax and sales tax, for the county and other county, not sales tax, but the other areas, property tax and Bullhead City sales tax. So, in thinking about how this would operate in relationship to the state statutes regarding how much you can spend in economic development each year, there is a statute that limits appropriations to $1.5 million each year. So even if this were implemented and we accrued $800,000 in the next 4 years, and if the economy was better, then it was over $1 million in the next 4 years. It would still be below that amount if all of it was enjoined in 1 year. But allowing that initiative, if we were to roll that out and accrue over a period of years, similar to other areas, we're thinking, you know, how much does the county really need to keep? And even if you kept $5 million, grew that thing to $5 million, that would be at least 3 years of appropriation, or close to 3 years of appropriation, at the $1.5 million each year. So that is the new initiative on economic development. For the animal shelter, not a lot of changes here. It does include about $57,000 to bring in additional staffing, as well as bringing one position from a temporary status to a full-time. And as you know, that the revenues and the donations have been fantastic, and that the expenses, it would be anticipated that the expenses would continue to be offset by those contributions. The elections division includes $99,000 for the redistricting consulting services. We're planning for a fall election with about $25,000 in expenses, and then the equipment replacement fund budgeted about $135,000. And I might add, all of that would come back before the board that would meet those thresholds. For the finance department, so the finance department has a whopping amount of initiatives this year. What we are requesting is budget neutral, with our costs offset by our central service charges, and then we have a reduction in capital expenses. We are requesting, we had requested HR review the financial positions compared to all the other county financial positions across the departments. And as well, they did an external review. Based upon that review, it compared the job duties, responsibilities, the scope of responsibility, I would say the span of responsibility, education, experience, proficiency, similar factors as they review for all of the recommendations. And as a result of that, it's recommended to increase the range for the finance administrator supervisor from 22 to 24, the accounting manager and the management analyst senior, as well as the accountant senior. I would also request that we be allowed to do a title change for the financial administrative supervisor, which is quite a mouthful, to a manager. We also are requesting to refund one of the positions from our downsizing that occurred in 2014. At that time, finance had 14 positions. We now have 11. We struggle in keeping up with our workload and hitting targets for due dates. We have not been able to remit a CAFR because you have to file that by December 31st. We believe that the Auditor General is supposed to release our audited financial statements today, but they've been in their office for quite a while. But a great deal of the delays initially are on our side, where we've got so much to do. And while it's not pleasant to stand before you and say that we miss our targets and fall behind, we work very hard, a lot of hours, and it's a compilation of a lot of things. There's been significant turnover, both in finance. We've had like a 42% turnover rate, and there's been a significant turnover in other county departments. And we spend a lot of time working other departments' financial people through the regulations that we have to meet for the uniform accounting. I mean, sometimes it's just the county policies and procedures, but in other respects, it's how to record journal entries and things like that that have occurred. So for those reasons, we're asking to refund one of those positions. We're also including that the support staff positions in our department would be included as eligible for the Administrative Specialist Series as employees achieve those criteria. Similarly, HR, I've got quite a bit to go through for HR. They're requesting a market adjustment for the HR manager, again, to be comparable to other positions, given their workload, their range of responsibility, the experience that they've brought forth managing benefit programs, the education of that individual, and then other similar factors. There's also a request for the HR assistant to move from a range 15 to an 18, noting it performs direct support for the director and the manager and is aligned with an analyst position. They are also requesting to reclassify one of the senior positions to a generalist, so it's from a range 12 to a 15. That person would then be responsible for the county training coordination that has been brought up several years. And this would be an action plan to actually bring that forward. They would need to work with the departments, do the research, create the materials, provide the training, or arrange for outside instructors if necessary. And then that person would also supervise and back up other HR technicians. And then the final request from HR is a market adjustment for the HR technician positions. Those positions have had the most turnover in their department. They've had 7 people turn over in the last 3 years. All of their 4 technicians are certified professionals through the IPMA HR designation, and they definitely have assumed greater responsibility and a significant increase in special assignments, particularly this past year. And it's not just been COVID impacts, but there have been other federal changes with benefits in relationship to COBRA, just a huge variety of how we have to pay some of the EBT items, some things like that. So that is part of the reasons, these are part of the reasons why this initiative is requested. The department also noted that the positions are crucial. It's necessary to retain qualified and experienced employees, and that they are the backbone of the county, virtually touching each one of our lives. The initiatives are split funded, so there's a fairly minimal impact on the general fund. They're split funded with the EBT fund. The procurement initiative is really kind of informational. There's a slight cost to this, but overall we would, by implementing an Amazon Business Prime membership for the county, we would have to pay for that, but we would then offset those costs with reductions of individual memberships that departments are paying for. And I think we have about 7 other individual memberships right now. It would also provide some efficiencies in other areas with respect to cost and transparency, and then discounts. Community services include step increases for their coordinator positions, the housing program specialist, senior, and the account specialist. They've had a lot of turnover in their office as well. And they've had increased responsibilities that they've had to add onto other folks that are working these jobs in order to accommodate the deficiencies of the lost talent and still needing to provide the same level of service. And they've also had a growth in programs, as you're very familiar with. And then they also have an initiative to reclassify 2 of their program coordinators to office manager positions. The Public Fiduciary Department has represented initiatives to upgrade their software, to reclassify their accountant position from a range 16 to an 18, and also reclassify a case specialist license to a manager position. The manager position that they have in there, it's $3,000 for a step increase, not the manager, the specialist. Yeah, that is. The manager position has attained licensure through the Supreme Court, and this would also help the department achieve parity with their other case specialists. All initiatives have been represented to be sustainable based upon savings, again, through personnel changes where they've had some retirements with the new employees being paid at a lower rate of pay. Public health did not have any notable new initiatives. They do have an increase, a slight increase in the general fund for their health programs of $46,000, but there was no increase in senior programs. They have an accreditation budget that includes the update of the CHIP, the Community Health Improvement Plan, and then, of course, reaccreditation costs, but no other new initiatives. Public health is primarily funded through grants, with about $1.5 million funded from the general fund. In development services, they have a request to participate in the countywide initiatives for the administration specialist series. And in some of these cases, it's a series, but it includes one person, so to speak, at the current time. So again, it's not a wide open door. The employees have to exhibit that they are performing to meet the criteria and the benchmarks, and the department has to document and evidence what the employee is doing that would allow them to be eligible for these series. But it would reduce the time that I stand before you each budget year talking about reclassifications, and the time that you spend during board meetings for interim reclassification request. The building inspector and plans examiner, similar, would be related to the job series, progressive actions, and in their automation fund and P&Z, they include some additional equipment replacement and some system review in their permitting process to streamline that. Building inspection, again, notes activity levels that are rebounding and the initiative that they would like to participate in with the plans examiner would allow some of that increased workload to transition a little bit better as people achieve the progressive positions. They would assume greater responsibility, and they intend to expedite the service delivery doing so. They would need a new vehicle in the department to keep up with some of the increased volume of inspections and also to provide better response times. In the Department of Environmental Quality, that includes some of the items that we've discussed for several years as those projects come from the 5-year plan and then become actionable. It does include the engineering reconstruction of the septic sludge disposal ponds in Mojave Valley, and purchases in the other areas, and an upgrade to the scale house at Surbat. Flood Control Division includes increasing their reserve by $1 million from $4 million to $5 million. And then they also have in next year $2 million budgeted for the Grace Nail Channel improvements, some improvements in the Valley Vista detention basin, and then other projects amount to about $700,000. Similar to the DEQ, they have 5-year plans, and these are repeats of those capital items as they progress through the years. In moving over to Public Works, the Roads Department has some initiatives for their road maintenance supervisor market adjustments. There's a market adjustment for the loss prevention consultant, and that is actually one of the personnel in the emergency risk management guidance that reports under Byron's authority, but works out of Public Works. And that would bring that person just to the same pay as the others performing the similar job. They also have initiatives for their equipment and pavement preservation analysis. In capital improvements, they're asking about $3.6 million. They've got a variety of equipment. I've listed it for you so you don't have to look it up. Overall, motor graders, leveling systems for the motor graders, vehicle replacements. They've actually want to purchase a pre-owned dozer. What else is on here? Some pneumatic rollers for the chip seal program, items that are needed for compaction of material. And if you want me to mention any of the others, I'm happy to, but you can read the list on your own, and we can certainly go back through their initiatives in detail if needed. In the engineering division, it does include a market adjustment for their budget and accreditation manager, so that is the finance person, Public Works, that we work with. They also have a reclassification request for their survey party chief to an engineering tech specialist, some drone software, a hydrology study, and then licensing. Their capital items that they have noted in engineering amounts to about $1.3 million. Again, it's the annual pavement preservation program, vehicle replacements, right-of-way purchases, and surveying system replacement. And then Sonia loaded, thank you. The schedule showing what those projects are for the current year. By current year, I mean I'm already in next year. Join me there, please. For traffic control, we've got some equipment replacements, 2 vehicle replacements, and under fleet maintenance, equipment maintenance, and fleet maintenance, they're requesting to unfreeze 2 positions, an office specialist that is split funded with fleet, and then an equipment mechanic position. For the equipment mechanic, that was actually requested last year. but inadvertently, it was not included with the final adoption that was provided to the board, and that was my fault. And therefore, it's presented to you again this year. So you may have heard about this for 2 years in a row. That is why. The reasons supporting documentation that these positions are needed clearly are to improve service delivery, reduce job delays, where these folks can, for the mechanic and the technicians, they actually can go remotely to the job location to do repairs instead of having to transport equipment back in the office. In speaking with the department, they also have obviously offices in each of the primary areas. They have to share employees, and they still would, even by adding one mechanic, they still would have to share some of those, but it would be a bit easier to get out more timely and reduce other costs in transporting back and forth. They have some other minor equipment replacement, and then they, in their capital portion, they would like to upgrade the diesel fuel tank and install an above-ground tank in Mojave Valley. Some other diagnostic scanning equipment and vehicle upgrades in the equipment shop. They have a hoist replacement as an initiative upgrade in the Kingman shop, oil tank upgrades in the Lake Havasu shop, and a tire replacement in Mojave Valley. And then there's going to be a carryover of the software and a new add-on for the maintenance reporting system from the current year into next year. For the vehicle use fund, we've got 27 vehicles on the replacement list for next year. 13 of those are the sheriff, and then 7 are for the carpool. The others are just 1 or 2 in the other departments that are listed there. There are 10 new additional vehicles. And as mentioned before, 1 for the building inspection division. Then we've got 1 in animal shelter, animal control, community services, and then 6 of those then would be related to the sheriff's initiative for the deputy positions. For public works facilities, the jail maintenance, jail major maintenance, I should add, has several projects that we're going to need to roll over. And then it also includes an increased price tag for next year for projects that were in the 5-year plan. Under the county projects where they assess building needs in each of the areas throughout the county, then we are seeing an increase of about $430,000 in that area. And then janitorial, just to note that that division is assuming an increase workload, if you will, by 387,000 square feet is what is noted. It does include the new Kingman Superior Court building. I shouldn't say that 387,000 is the existing, but that does include the court. So it is like a 3.94% increase in their square foot that they provide service for. For the GVID, we've got some vehicles, continuation of the SCADA project, the meter replacements, fire hydrant replacements, standpipe upgrades, and the well number 3, new equipment, and the connection to the storage tanks. For I-40 water, again, similarly with the SCADA projects and the meters, the fire hydrant replacements, they would like to add a well site shade structure, a warehouse with a small office and a bathroom, and then frequency drive installations in a couple of the wells, and they need to replace the isolation valves. And I'm saying that like I know what that is. I don't know what that is. And purchase spare parts for their equipment. Horizon 6 includes a booster station generator transfer switch replacement. And that is all that was listed as a new initiative in the Horizon 6. For parks, this is a little bit lengthy because we've got several parks to go through, but we'll try to speed through this as quickly as possible. One item that would obviously be a continued annual expense. They're requesting to add another detective and split fund that with Erase, and the addition of a new custodian at Davis Camp. They also have design of the RV areas at that park, and then about $500,000 in capital projects. Capital projects, again, are listed for you in the 5-year plan, and then noted here as those items arrive in the year that they're projecting to complete those projects. So it includes the next phase of the water master plan, replacing the HVAC units for the homes that are at Davis Camp, renovate one of the homes, and improvements at that fishing pier. For Wallapai Mountain Park, they have some upgrades in equipment and body cameras for their park rangers. And I didn't note why that request was on here, so that may be something that we, if interested, that we can follow up with. But they do have about $65,000 in capital expenses at the Wallapai Mountain Park, including sidewalk replacement, renovation of one of the cabins, and Rec Area 2. They're receiving some grants for UTV lights and the sirens, and then they would also like to purchase a dingo, which is a riding piece of equipment that they use for trail work and park maintenance. And community parks includes about $30,000 in capital items to replace the playground equipment at Chloride Park. And then they also would like to upgrade the electrical panel at the Veterans Park and basketball hoops at Mount Tipton Park. So in total, the parks initiatives are $135,000 impacting the operations and about $600,000 in capital requests. For Erase, so this is the other side of the Davis Camp request. It's to add the detective and split fund that, add a body camera for the law enforcement officer, and then a new vehicle for this person. Under emergency management, they have about $74,000 in their budget for grants. One of the grants is, kind of described quite a bit. It includes a request from the ADOA Technology Office and the Homeland Security Office to apply for this grant on behalf of Yavapai and La Paz and Mojave County. And similar projects have been presented to other advisory councils for each of the Homeland Security region. So those counties, those 3 counties, are in our region. And Byron has been asked to submit this for the region. The funding, the purpose of this is to potentially expand the existing statewide program and address cybersecurity and training needs necessary to do that. The state would actually manage these funds. We're simply applying for them. The state would be the grant administrator and ensure that this occurred. And then Mojave County would participate in the application of the software and the training for our county. They also have on their capital request to purchase a cadaver liquid cooling unit. So moving on to IT. Again, there's quite a bit of an initiative listed here on one slide, but what is being requested is a 2-year approach to implement a reorganization. Phase 1 would be an increase of about $190,000 that would include market adjustments and rename their divisions and the job titles to be more consistent with industry standards, if you will. 2 employees would be added to the staff. some of the existing staff that would be included in the reorganization would now assume responsibilities for their help desk to aid the department maybe in becoming more efficient at answering some of those desks. I know that Nathan has stats on the volume of calls and the type of calls that go through that help desk, and the transition of doing this not only would try to minimize costs to the county, but help the county, as well as provide progressive opportunities for the employees. So if this were approved, then phase 2 would be implemented in the subsequent year, and it essentially consists of 2 additional employees. The capital plan that was submitted includes replacing the Justware system that's used by the county legal departments. So the system they're currently utilizing is at the end of its service life. So this would be rolled out with this upgrade and then paid for essentially by the general fund into the IT department. They also have requested to replace the UPS at the sheriff's office and here at the administrative data center, replace the transformer, and then replace the video management system at Public Works. This is a bit out of order, but in going back to major maintenance countywide, we've taken the opportunity to list some of these items that the funding would be utilized for. Again, the jail major maintenance would end up with $1.5 million, and I know some of you are not surprised by that, by the cost of the annual maintenance and replacing the equipment in there. The closed caption TV system has reached the end of its life and would be about $1 million to replace that system, and should be happening pretty rapidly. Other equipment in there, you can see upgrades and replacements and just plain maintenance in some areas. In the library district, the library operating fund will have a balance of about $4 million anticipated at year end. They have included a few initiatives that would be reclassifying the library clerk ranges because of the minimum wage increases. And they would also like to replace the aging security system and cameras with newer technology in their equipment, and then expand the coverage at one of the community locations. And so doing it incrementally allows them to be able to afford to do this. And maybe it's also strategic based upon human capital. That's a new phrase, the human capital. But it takes humans to do this work, and there's only so much that you can get done in a window. With a healthy balance, we could probably afford to do some additional and expand it more quickly, but the way that it's rolled out is just one community location for the next fiscal year. They also have fire protection and HVAC replacements. The TV district doesn't have a huge balance, but we would end in a positive direction for the year. We would ask that the current tax rate of 6 cents be continued in order to allow the fund to remain structurally balanced. It does include several capital requests, and we've identified those for you so you don't have to look those up, but we'd be more than happy to if you'd like to have further discussion on any of those. It does include about $150,000 for a new site in Havasu if the coverage were expanded. In the construction fund, we have the rollover for the animal shelter and the court remodel project. The proposed legal services center, the idea is basically to demolish the old jail facility and then build up in the same location a new facility that would house both the county attorney's office and the legal defense offices. The total project cost is anticipated to be about $9 million over the next 3 years, sourced to the sales tax funds that we've laid out in the plan. And then county attorney contribution from their RICO funds. At the project completion, then, it would allow the board to retire some of the buildings that are in really poor shape, demolish those, do some demolition work, create additional parking spaces, and then those that are in pretty good, well, I wouldn't say any of them are in pretty good shape, but those maybe that were more marketable could possibly be sold, and then those funds redeposited back into the construction fund. This fund also includes, as mentioned earlier, $1 million for the sheriff's substation, for one sheriff's substation at this point in time for next year. Again, noting that they have requested consideration of 2 substations for the upgrade or replace, both in Havasu and Mojave Valley, and then a remodel of Beaver Dam. And we have scheduled those over the next 4 years, with the Lake Havasu initially, then the Mojave Valley, and then Beaver Dam in the final year. And the Beaver Dam is about, I think we've targeted it for about $500,000, so it wouldn't necessarily be the same scope as the others. And whatever discussion the board would have on with the sheriff on relocation, we're certainly willing and able to accommodate those needs, pending approval of funding sources, I should add. And then the final project that we've identified within the current plan is to construct a county-owned morgue. That would be anticipated not this coming year as we go through the discussions with what we're going to do, but then probably initiate that in 2023. There's going to have to be some scope work conducted to identify where that should be located, how big, what the type of electronics upgrades need to occur, and those kinds of things. But we've put, again, $5 million as an estimated project cost on that. For PRS, we've talked about quite a bit of this already. We will be bringing forward the annual pension funding policy to you in June, probably at the second June meeting. Now you are required for at least, I think, the last 3 years, we've had to bring forward for board adoption each year what our policy has been. To date, our policy has been that we are paying as we go. So we are meeting the terms of that. Again, it's about $3 million in fiscal year 22 for that annual cost, and we have an unfunded liability of about $26 million. For the elected officials retirement system, which still falls under the bailiwick of the PSPRS, the liability is addressed in a pooled contribution scenario where we are joined with all the other state, city, county, fire district, any participant that is in that, we're all in one pool. Opposite of PSPRS, where we stand alone with our own pension plan. This one is a combined pool. There are 23 years remaining in that unfunded, paying off that unfunded liability. All of our rates, contribution rates for the counties, with the state, other districts, but it's 61.5%, and it has been for several years. We budget about $1.5 million for that cost. We have an unfunded liability for our share of about 21 million. The PSPRS representatives and a few conversations I've had with a couple of board members have continued to be similar as what their presentation was to the board several years ago, that for EORP, unless all participants are going to pay down, there's no incentive for Mojave County to pay down. If we pay down the advance payments to the EORP fund, we are contributing to everybody else's liability. They're reducing their liability, not just ours. because it's a pooled item. So in summary, and the options that we are proposing, the general fund balance rolled out as we've made a recommendation would be about $40 million at the end of the fiscal year. And that does approximate and actually exceeds a 3-month working capital and then an $8.8 million contingency. And then we've outlined how those funds would be available for one-time uses. The 4-year outlook again indicates that it is sustainable with about 2.5% increases in revenue and likewise on the expense side. As proposed, the tax rate would be 57 cents below the maximum tax rate. It would be equal to the truth in taxation rate, and you would still have up to 1/4 cent in sales tax authority. For the current year, Mojave County is 50 cents below the maximum tax rate with $1.90 as the tax rate. It's about worth $10 million a year that the county is not collecting, that you have the legal authority to do so. With the proposal or without the proposal, the T&T rate is going to $1.82. We've already received the worksheet. The worksheet is provided to us by Department of Revenue and the Property Tax Oversight Committee. And because of basically the new investment in new construction has grown, to 5 or 6%. It's grown quite a bit over the period of years. Then that calculation of how new construction plays into the T&T rate, in a positive year where new construction, you don't want me to talk about this. If it exceeds 2%, the tax rate falls. If it's below 2%, essentially the tax rate increases. So no matter what is decided as we move forward in the budget discussions and board adoptions, the T&T rate is going to go down 8 cents. On the next slide, that is a lot of numbers, but I wanted to provide you, not necessarily to go over in detail today, but an opportunity to review, and these are in your budget book, the revenue structure, the primary revenue structures over the period of years, demonstrating the reduction in the property tax rate, what we would identify as the revenue coming from the excise or sales tax, and then basically keeping flat, again, those other revenues. The expense side, we've already gone over, representing 2.5% increases in those areas. And in each of the years, then I would draw your attention to kind of the middle of the page where it says net recurring rev and then brackets EXP. So that's net recurring revenue would be positive where revenue exceeds expense, or if it's in brackets for the expense, then the expenses are greater. So in each of those years, from an operating basis, we would have additional revenue greater than that exceeds the expenses. And then by investing those as one-time monies at the bottom section there as non-recurring outlays for the capital projects, then we get to our bottom line, our ending fund balance. In each case, we still would represent at least a 25% balance at the end of 4 years, which is 25% of $100 million in the general fund. So from a long-range perspective, again, as proposed, I've just discussed this, that you've got a lot of options available with or without this proposal, that the board is well below the maximum rates, both for property tax and sales tax, that we recognize and thank you for the items that you've gone through, the actions that you've taken. You represent a well-balanced budget. You've provided opportunities within this budget and other budgets to promote economic development and quality of life throughout the county. The timeline going forward would be a tentative budget adoption in June, but prior to the end of the fiscal year. You would have a final budget hearing and adoption the first meeting in August, and then adoption of the tax rates would follow that. Just to let you know, I do this each year as well, that between the time that we develop the proposal and today, we have to reconcile to the tentative budget then items that changed between yesterday and today, so to speak. So we've received an update in the meantime on PILT revenue that would be estimated for next year. So it's a slight increase that we'll be bringing forth in the tentative budget, an increase of $44,000. We've got some adjustments in line items to make for the board-approved item for the Kingman Justice Court. The building division, we need to add $1,800 for one more PC. There was an initiative approved Monday for an engineering tech senior that, because it's now been approved by the board, then we'll remove it as a new initiative in the department budget, but the impact will be budget neutral. We need to add library donations of almost $14,000 from the Bullhead City Friends of the Library, and add the ARPA monies for the libraries that Kathy was notified of yesterday. We also need to potentially carry over some remaining remodel expenses, and I don't think that that's going to be significant, but I'm just letting you know that that would be part of what we would do for the tentative budget. There's a slight reduction in the emergency health preparedness grant, and a change really just in line items for the Superior Court Law Library Fund, just within their salary and ERA with a net impact of 0, but it would be a change from what you would see in your book. And then also carry over about $83,000 in Superior Court security improvements from the current year. So with that, I thank you for your time and all the decisions that you have to make. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, well, you've now met with each board member twice to go over the budget, given us a budget book, and then slowly read this presentation today, so I'm pretty sure the board has a good idea of what we're talking about. We'll take a 5-minute break before we start into the questions. All right, we're back in session. Next on the agenda is time if any elected official would like to speak to the board about something that maybe was turned down by the county manager or staff. Now's the time to come forward and ask for any other initiatives. Seeing none, really, Sheriff, you'd like something, go right on up.
Good morning, Supervisor Johnson. It's been kind of a quick morning, so I wanted to take a little time and discuss our budget request. No, I think what I'll do, in all honesty, I have a prepared presentation that I probably won't go over today. You know our position, members of the board. We're going to continue to push to get what we need. We've been very successful over the last 4 years, even dealing with COVID issues where we didn't put any extra budget requests in. But I'll hold off on this request. I think I'll bring it back to you before the August meeting. Basically, what it is, it just kind of explains the need, why we're continuing to put in for this. It's entailing our 10-year plan and our overall goals. And I think it's very imperative that you continue to hear from me, because I need to ensure that we continue with the successes that we're having. One thing I do want to say, though, and I'm very proud of this, our staff at the Sheriff's Office has been working tremendously hard. Over the last, or the first term that I've been in office, we have seen a remarkable decrease in crime specific to property crimes, nearly cutting our burglaries in half, our thefts in half. And I say that because it certainly demonstrates the value for what we're doing. So I'll leave it at that for today, and I look forward to seeing you either next month or in August. Thank you.
Sheriff. Any other elected official?
But of course. Good morning, Chairman Johnson and Supervisors. I appreciate first you letting me having the opportunity to talk. And I wanted to just say a few things about what we're doing in our office, in my office. The sales of the auctions that were done from the foreclosures that started about 3 years ago. Your clerk of the board had a very successful sale, which brought in about $2 million to the general fund and $3 million to the overall budget. So that was very exciting for the county, and I feel like I really appreciate that you guys let me move forward on that, because I thought it was really good timing, and we have about 6,000 properties now back on the tax rolls. So really excited about that. We've cut our head count by another 2 people this year, and I want you to know that that has not been easy. We've come down from about 30 people in 2008 when I was here to 20 now. So I think that our office has done a lot of things that were expensive to the county in the short term, but have really panned out in the long term. And I'm really proud of that. The other thing is that we have increased processes improvements for the tax lien foreclosure process. We have technology upgrades in Laserfish and Creditron. We've increased training and cross-training in our office so more than one person can answer every question. And increased electronic payments. In fiscal year 2019 through 21, we had a 60% increase in e-notices, which does save the county a lot of money and people, labor. So there's almost a 30% overall increase in all electronic form payments. Now, obviously, some of that was due to the COVID issue, and we're hoping that people found that it was easy, and they'll continue to do it because it saves them tax money. The right sizing and salary control of my office, the merit-based approach to compensation, full control of my salary within my department has been extremely helpful over the years. I think the office itself runs now so much better because we have people not just that are compensated, but people that are compensated at a level that they can do more work at a higher level and really move through things quickly. Instead of having 3 people to do one job, I have one person that now is extremely capable. So I don't think that we work harder than anyone else. I'm not going to say we are the ones who work the hardest. We work smart, and we work long hours. So I'm just really excited about that. Countywide compensation initiatives, you guys have been very helpful over the years, and I appreciate that. So thank you very much. It's been wonderful to work with all of you. I have had not such great experiences when I've been here before in years past, and I'm really happy to have the board that we do. Thank you all so much.
Any other elected official would like to address the board? Thank you. All right, courts.
May it please the chair, board members, management, council, and clerk. It really has been an exceptional experience working the board over the past decade with respect to the budget. I truly appreciate your public service because I know that when you do vote, you do so in what you believe is in the best interest of the county. I would further like to commend the board for its management team. It was really an exceptional experience also working with County Manager Elters as well as Finance Director Lloyd and their staffs. The budget process was very smooth. We do support management's budget proposal. I will defer to my soon-to-be successor presiding judge, Steve Moss, with respect to the particulars concerning the court budget. McKip and I will be available with our institutional knowledge should you have any questions or concerns with respect to the court's budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, board members, for having us here today. I'd like to echo Judge Gertler's comments. I was extremely impressed with County Manager Elters and Cora Lloyd's professionalism and preparedness and their engagement with the courts and drilling down on particulars. When it comes to our budget proposal today, our changes that we'd like, most of them, the vast bulk of it is security related, is the bailiff's position. Mojave County does not have and never has had full-time bailiffs, unlike any other county in the state of Arizona. We've always relied upon previously part-time bailiffs. A few things have changed, which has caused us to come to you seeking our 5 full-time positions. Those are focused, 4 of them to the criminal courts, 1 to the virtual court that is setting up as it relates to COVID and advances in technology. The bailiff's positions are focused on bringing us into standards administered by the Administrative Office of the Courts, which is one of the problems we've encountered in the past and we're trying to correct. And secondly, to help us deal with our jury trial backlog. I believe we have 10 trials scheduled with over the next 3 weeks. I think that's the number I heard. And that's just going to continue. So if you have any questions regarding any of our particulars of our budget items, I would be more than glad to answer them. But I would like to say thank you again to Coral. Her presentation was excellent and it was very educational.
Thank you. We'll go over that when we get to through everybody there, Judge
Great.
Moss.
Thank you very much for hearing from us. I greatly appreciate it.
Department heads, anybody want to address the board? All right. Now's the time for discussion from the board. Supervisor Bishop, do you have any questions of the budget?
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. No questions at this time.
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Lloyd, on base pay on page 19, so when we talk about our base salary, actually, so the merit pay increase would then be the base pay for anybody else that came into that job at a later date?
Sorry, I was looking for page 19. The base pay Could you please repeat it? I'm sorry.
They were talking about merit pay increases 1%, no
Yes.
greater than 3%. And then it says the merit pay will be included in the base salary for future years.
Yes.
So does that mean that is an increase for that position
Yes.
in perpetuity?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Economic Development Fund on page 36. As an example, we were talking about Dot Foods. I believe that the new ruling from the Arizona Supreme Court on the gift clause would have made that illegal. Because you have to receive something of tangible value, not merely economic activity. So if we're looking at that money going into that fund, I don't know that you can make those type of payments anymore.
So I appreciate that comment, and I would have to say that I'm not sure that we've looked at the delivery of the evaluation indicating what did the county receive in value. And there was some language in there that actually quoted the statute describing the increase in taxes, and specifically for Mojave County, it was property tax. And therefore, their conclusion that they had received the value of about $600,000 in taxation improvements deliverable to each of those districts, including sales tax to Bullhead City. So, well, that was definitely something that we'd have to review and absolutely consider.
Chairman Johnson, if I could just answer that question as well.
Rest, please.
So I think what Supervisor Gould has stated is accurate in the sense that the agreement that we had, or the transaction that occurred with Dot Foods in light of the most recent Supreme Court ruling does suggest that it could have been questionable, certainly. And also that going forward, whenever we do any kind of economic development transaction similar to that, then I think really the worry is on the transactional part of it, that we make sure that we get the direct benefits that Supervisor Gould has pointed out. You know, the Supreme Court ruling really identified that it's that direct benefits that the county has to get, and that there is not and that the transaction, the consideration is not so substantially off that the county is really getting the short end of the stick, so to speak. We have to get a direct benefit, and that direct benefit is something that is tangible and something that we can say, yep, that is a bargain for exchange that the county receives. So I think economic development can go forward. It's just we need to make sure that we're in compliance with that most recent Arizona Supreme Court ruling.
And the issue is that it has to be, the way that I read it, it has to be something that we wouldn't have gotten from another business. So the mere promise of economic activity or jobs or property tax doesn't meet the test. It has to be a direct benefit to the public.
And Supervisor Gould, I believe that you're accurate in that. There's still the two parts. That has to serve a public purpose, and then the consideration part. And that second part of the consideration part is what you're talking about. That the county has to get some kind of direct benefit, and that the indirect benefits of increased taxes and things will not meet that second criteria.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. But I still would say, though, the Supreme Court didn't say that governments cannot enter into economic development transactions. They just got to make sure that they're complying with what the Supreme Court has outlined is necessary to comply with the gift clause.
Well, right, and you can't, if you pick winners and losers and give away money, public money, there has to be a benefit to the public because it's the public's money.
Correct.
It shouldn't be government picking winners and losers. Let's see. Amazon Prime. I am not a fan of Mr. Bezos, as are most conservative Republicans no longer a fan of Mr. Bezos. So with this, we're going to reduce the number of Amazon Prime accounts we have?
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. I think that we have 9. Okay, I think I said 7. We've got 9. Sure.
Good morning. I wasn't prepared to speak. One When we did research
To
on
the
this,
gauntlet.
yes, that's okay. So I will tell you, as a general rule, procurement isn't a huge fan of Amazon. But what we've realized is that we have departments that are either using their personal accounts, where we have no real view of what they're purchasing, or that departments are using their P card to purchase a market level account. And that's the 9 that we've been able to verify, is that there are 9 departments that are paying for Prime. And we would offset that expense by buying a business Prime account, and we would have full transparency on what they're purchasing.
I can see the wisdom of not letting individuals start their own account and then expecting reimbursement from the county on that. It's interesting because I bought tire plugs from the auto parts store on my P card and received interrogation on that, so it's interesting that people could set up a Prime account. I personally would urge people to buy products a different way. Mr. Bezos is a robber baron, and it plays in politics and wants to undermine American values. But that's my own personal belief, and that's rhetoric.
And I will say this will give us a little bit more control on restricting certain purchases. They would only be able to use the county domain for the business account, and then we would be able to restrict them from maybe making certain technology purchases or item purchases. So we'd get a little bit better control on what they're using Amazon Prime for.
And much of the things that the departments would be buying are available from their vendor
From
for the
existing
same
contracts.
price and with free shipping and all that anyway. So I think it's potential problematic to let them buy things off of Amazon, to tell you the truth. But I think that everybody having a credit card is a potential problem also.
Yeah, our thoughts are that they're going to buy from Amazon either way. They'll find ways around with small purchase procedures. This gives us better transparency of what they are buying.
Thank you. On page 73, RICO funds. So the county attorney is going to kick in his RICO funds to this. There may be a reduction in RICO funds. The governor just signed a bill that says that you have to have a conviction to keep people's things. That merely the fact that you have cash in your car doesn't make you a drug dealer and make your cash eligible to be seized. So you may see a reduction in that because there's a certain level that people are not going to be willing to try to go to court to get their property back. So this might make it a lot easier for them to get their property back if there's no conviction. So you'll probably see a reduction in those funds.
Just to speak to that very briefly, the amount currently that we have budgeted is $750,000 from prior balances. But yes, the county attorney's office did mention exactly what you've voiced. So thank you.
While you're there, it's interesting that we express sales tax numbers in cents rather than a percentage.
And that is to make it understandable at the base level. But yes, the statute reads as a percentage of the state tax.
Right.
Yes.
Also, I'm not convinced that there's enough safety for the taxpayer to institute a sales tax and put that money into the general fund. My concern is that I don't want to end up with the ability for the board to take a sales tax and then continue to increase property taxes. I know that it takes a unanimous vote to raise property taxes above 15%. But I don't even know that amount is greater than the amount brought in by the proposed sales tax. But I have not had anybody give me anything that gives me enough comfort level to be willing to move forward with the implementation of a sales tax. And I bring that up because it looks like our entire document is based on the adoption of a sales tax. So the earlier that I bring this to your attention, then the more time you'll have to work your way around that then. And I think that's it.
Supervisor Angus, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Johnson. This whole, I'm getting feedback on this. Okay. staff new initiatives since I have been. Is this better? This is better, isn't it? Okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. Coral, thank you so much for that, and I see how much hard work and all the staff and all the elected officials. It was a little daunting because I believe this is the largest ask for new initiatives since I have been supervisor, and this is year 9 for me. So it's a lot to take in. I want to go back and just for a minute and revisit the economic development discussion that Supervisor Gould was having a few minutes ago. I don't understand if direct property tax, job, tax, sales tax related to it, all of that trickle down benefit isn't considered beneficial justification. What is?
I will defer to Mr. Esplin.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
It's about the benefit of receiving the taxation for the economic development initiative that what occurred with Dot Foods was a direct benefit of taxes.
So,
Right. I mean, what is a direct benefit if it's not property tax, which is basically $1? We've already paid back dollar for dollar what we gave. So what is a beneficial use?
So an example of direct benefit, and I think it was in the court's opinion, if not in this one, but a previous one, but a direct benefit would be if Mojave County entered into an agreement for the building of a private parking garage. And let me back up. Let's say a developer wanted to build a parking garage for his business, and he wanted economic development funds from the county. If the county then gave money to the developer to build that private garage, and then said, hey, Mojave County, you can lease those spaces, you can have those spaces, you can use those spaces for your benefit. That would be a direct benefit where we are bargained for exchange. We are giving money, $1 million to the developer so the developer can build his parking garage, and in exchange, we are getting something back. We are getting parking spaces. That would be an example. In fact, that was a Supreme Court case a couple years back, but in that instance, Maricopa County or whatever city was down there in the valley gave millions and millions of dollars for like 20 parking spaces. I mean, an absurdly small number of parking spaces. And that's where the Supreme Court said, whoa, this is way out of balance. The benefit that the state or the city is getting is so minuscule compared to the money it was giving that violated the gift clause. So that would be an example of a direct benefit. I'm sorry?
Okay, well, I understand that, and I don't want to get too much off topic here, but you have to weigh how much you're giving, how much you're getting. So, we gave $500,000, and we've already gotten that back. But anyway, I'm for that whole thing about putting a little aside. Can we talk about refinancing? Did we ever revisit as a board refinancing the PSTRS debt?
Supervisor Angus, we discussed the potential of refinancing it, a couple of times at the board level. We brought it up last year that we may be going down that avenue, and actually, county manager and I met with some finance advisors to discuss that as an option. A couple of, there's some advantages of doing that where that is paid immediately. The downside of that is that you're still paying an interest rate, and that you have to shoot for that interest rate to be clearing the amount that you would otherwise pay if you paid cash down, along with the financing cost, the attorney fees, and all that goes into it. And as well, I think that Supervisor Gould last year had represented that it then becomes a debt. It takes up your debt ability within your financial wherewithal, and it's actually then a liability on your books. There's some other language that the debt, assuming the debt this is really weird language, but if you actually refinanced it as a debt issuance and you defaulted, you're allowed to do that. And that's a horrible business practice. That's ridiculous, but by definition, you could do that. Versus the unfunded liability that we have right now, we are obligated to pay no matter what. Even if it means increasing tax rates to do it, we have to pay that amount. So we have looked at it a little. I don't think that we've had any more board discussions. Our representation was our recommendation to begin to pay that in cash over the period of years and avoid the financing cost.
Okay. Another thing we have discussed in the past, and I don't know if this is something the board wants to revisit, but we talked about defunding the constables. And if that is something the board wants to discuss, I hope we can put it on a future agenda in the near future. And in the beginning of this discussion, Chairman Johnson said that we all met twice with you guys, but I didn't. I only met once. So I look forward to sitting down with you and hashing out, because this is, again, this is the largest growth of government of Mojave County since I've been supervisor, and I want to make sure I hear the justification for all of it. Thank you.
Supervisor Angus, can you repeat on the constables? Did you say you were interested if the board wanted to look at the termination of the use of constables?
Well, the only way we can do that is if we have the ability to defund them or change their salary rate. We learned that when the constables came before us asking for more money, and we had that discussion at the time if the constables were even really necessary, if we can use that money for the sheriff's office. So that would be, we can't, by statute, we can't do away with the position, but we could defund them.
Okay, thank you. We just had a hard time hearing you at that point.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
County Manager.
may I ask Supervisor Angus, I thought I heard you say constables. Are you speaking of constables, or are you referring to the bailiffs' positions that are part of the court's budget?
I believe I can answer for her. She's talking about the constables, not the bailiffs. Do you have anything else, Manager? No. Did you have anything else, Supervisor Angus?
Not right now, thank you.
Thank you. I have a few questions. Maybe just to clarify again what you told Supervisor Gould. You're saying that the 1% merit or up to 3% merit, if I'm paying somebody $1,000, I will, it's not a one-time shot. It is their salary from now on.
Correct, for that person. So if their salary was $40,000 and they received a $1,000 merit pay increase, their new base salary would be $41,000.
And then HR is going to come to me and say, well, now you've screwed up the salary range again because you're starting somebody or if they're moving them to that salary. I guess one of the problems that I have, and we've had it for years, and maybe this board wants to address it, is that we have in this budget, as we have in every other budget, asking for people to get the compensation and move their pay ranges. Why isn't that automatic? Why don't we have a set range and somebody knows when they hire on, they get X amount of dollars, and if they do nothing in 5 years, they get a pay raise, and if they do nothing in 10 years, they get a pay raise. Now, if they get an AA or a BA, they can bump up it in between. Why don't we have that in Mojave County? Why do we have to keep coming to the board to ask us to do this?
So from my perspective, that's the exact proposal that we have, is to begin going down that line. So we identified that in the past, at least in the assessor's office, there's some series in the treasurer's office. We included the 4 this year, the attorneys, the administrative specialist, office series and the building inspector plans examiner to move down that line, and county manager can speak to that more eloquently than I can from experience.
Manager Elters.
Mr. Chairman, board members, thank you. It's been my experience over the years that is an effective way of empowering department heads and enabling departments to attract and retain and promote. The experience that I would share with you is firsthand. I worked at a large agency and department where you were hired, and this because of my background, it was in the technical world, inspectors and technicians and so on, and you were hired as an inspector one or technician one, and you remained in that position until somebody retired or left or passed on. We had no means, and I was directly involved in changing that and promoting it, and created something similar to what we're proposing to the board here in these professional series, or technical or office admin, where you create a ladder, and with it you create milestones and you create thresholds, whether it's training, certification, education, or a combination of such, and and then you fund those positions to allow for that to take place. And so when an individual attains those levels of training and knowledge and experience, you promote them. You do exactly what you just described. You don't need to come back to the board. You empower the department head to do so, but you make it clear. You establish the requirements and you hold them accountable. That is indeed what we're proposing to the board in the 4 various series that you have in front of you.
Okay, but will that be for all employees, or are you just saying technical employees?
No, in this case, the example I gave was technical because that was my background, Chairman. These are for professional, for office assistant, the office analyst or administrative analyst. So it's across the board, and we intend to build on that. We intend to identify, as we implement these other areas where this may work and be beneficial. At the end of the day, the cost of turnover to the county is significant. We do really want to reduce it. There are effective ways of doing it. This is one of them. And turnover rate is really a two-fold. One is losing an employee entirely to go into somewhere else. The other is moving within departments, and there's a cost associated with both of them.
Okay, but just so I'm clear, every county employee is now on this. There will be if we pass this. Anybody that doesn't, and I think that hopefully you'll have in there a time structure too. So if a guy wants or a woman wants to, whatever their job title is, they're happy with that. They don't want to get an education, but they still go up at seniority. They get maybe a 3-year bump, a 5-year bump, that they get those. And I'm sure, like using the sheriff's department or say the county attorney's department as examples, they're not going to have all attorney 4s or all deputy 4s because they got to have a lower one because they're bringing people up so they retire. But just all of our employees will be there so we don't have to go through this again.
Mr. Chairman and board member, that truly is our goal. We have the 4 in front of you today, but our goal is to look at the various classifications. The office series affects so many different departments, so it's really more than just an individual department, but the intent is to have a structure in place that covers all the county employees and provide for the career path to move up, to learn. We want to invest in our employees and we want to retain them, and this is one way of doing it.
All right, that might be something when you come back with another budget to say, we have the plan in front of you, plus we have a plan for all employees to move up. That was just a suggestion. What else do we have here? I'm concerned that we once again have a compression issue at the sheriff's department and their people. How many times have we had a compression issue? Why haven't we solved that problem?
The way that the initiative was worded was compression and compensation. So I believe that overall, if once they've addressed the current compression, let's say 2 years ago,
Right?
if there is not continued increases in pay and the new people come online, so you go through, the sheriff can address this probably better, but when essentially you go through the academy, you become a sheriff's deputy, you're at the first step of where they're at, and if there are no further compensation increases over the period of years, let's say for 3 years, then meanwhile, a person that has zero experience, that has been through the academy, just finished, 16 weeks in, is now paid still the same rate as somebody now who's got 3 years of experience. So for those types of reasons, and he can...
Will this, with what Manager Elters is talking about, will that take care of that? Because that should have never happened. The guy should have, if he has 3 years on and he just wants to be a patrol deputy, he should be compensated for his time because he's now an experienced 3-year officer.
Chairman Johnson, thank you for saying that. That's 100% what we're trying to do. Members of the board, we created a new system. In a sense, we're trying to max out our deputies as quickly as possible. They have 7 steps. And the reason for that is we want to get to the point where we have the experience and the tenure and they're making a livable wage where they don't feel the need to go somewhere else. So that's why we reduced some of our steps in-house. In doing so, we brought up the starting pay. So we're well on the way to doing that. Many of our deputies are maxed out. They will not see another raise unless it's a COLA raise. But the concern we have is if we don't continue down this course, and it will close itself out in probably 4 years, but if we don't continue down this course, exactly what Ms. Lloyd said will happen, and we're going to revert back to where we were looking at compression issues. So maybe it's not even the right word anymore. We're just trying to avoid going back in time to where we have a 5-year deputy now making the same as a 1-year deputy. So if we were able to successfully get the step increases for that 7-year period, we wouldn't be before the board asking for more. We're just trying to get to a point where we don't go back in time. Does that make sense?
Yes, but we only have like one range of deputy, because what I'm used to is like a deputy 1, and then there would be like a 4 range in there, and then there'd be a deputy 2 with a 4 range, so the guy would go hired on as a deputy 1. Now, he might get more pay if he has an AA or BA, depending upon that, but then those would, so say a guy is hired on as a deputy 1, and he goes through those 4 steps, and he goes to a deputy 2, which is obviously higher than the 4-step deputy 1. We don't have that. We just have one range.
Right. In a sense, it's the same thing. We're just doing it each year. Instead of saying, hey, if you hit 4 years, we're going to give you a 18% increase. Every year, we're going to give you that 3% until we get you to the point where you're fully compensated. The only way to increase your pay as a deputy is either if the board passes a cost of living or they elect to promote, and then there's an even shorter window for our sergeants. They have 5 steps. Again, we want to get them maxed out. It's all about retention, and it's all about keeping those who have put in the time and have proven their worth. And as I mentioned earlier, we are well into this. I probably have close to 30 deputies who are maxed out already, and others maybe this year, the next year, or the following, they're going to be there. And we're going to get to a point where this conversation would be mute. We'll always have the funding to move people up and down as needed. We're very close.
Okay, yeah, I was just checking, and that's what I'd like to see it throughout the whole county, not just the sheriff's department. And I was just curious on that compression because we had done it before.
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Medical examiner. We're talking about going out for a bid. Isn't the medical examiner's contract up in June?
Mr. Chairman, board members, Yes, indeed. The medical examiner contract is expiring. We have been in discussion with the current medical examiner to continue with those services until we procure and bring on board a new provider. There may be an opportunity. Initially, we were led to believe that the current provider is not interested in renewing. Now we understand there may be more interest, especially if they team up with another. So we are currently in discussion with them. There is a solicitation, I want to say, on the street as we speak, Mr. Chairman, to invite proposal for those services. So we will be coming to the board here shortly with hopefully a recommendation going forward. But the current provider will continue to provide those services until the board awards a new contract to move forward. With that, if I might add, just for future visionary thoughts, and that is, we are reaching out to the two other comparable counties, that being Yavapai and Coconino. We have meetings scheduled to go meet with my counterparts and the medical examiners and public health directors in those counties to review their models. Their models have their medical examiner services being in-house as opposed to contracted out. We want to learn from their experience and then hopefully come back to the board with some options.
All right, so we're behind the ball, though, because his contract expires the end of June. We should have already gone out for bid on this, shouldn't we?
Mr. Chairman and board members, that is an accurate statement. We are behind the ball. I acknowledge that.
All right, thank you. On this economic development, just for everybody else, I don't believe that we should be taking our new growth and putting it into an economic development fund. We can keep that in contingency, and if there's money needed and I lose the vote, then it can go to wherever they want to put it. Can you explain to me why we need a detective in parks? Or half-funded detective in parks?
Good afternoon, Chairman Johnson, members of the board. Mojave County Parks, in tandem with the Erase Division, is proposing a detective that will be trained and considered an erase detective, half funded under the erase program for ongoing and increased investigation and enforcement of wildcat dumping throughout the unincorporated area of Mojave County. It is proposed as half funded by Parks in recognition of the last couple of years of substantial increased visitor demand, namely to the Davis Camp Regional Park, which has demanded additional and largely rental security details, especially during the summer weekends period. So what we envision is alleviating this outside expense, replacing it with a trained erase detective that is very much in tune with our business practices and our enforcement practices, and it just adds a substantially more coordination and, quite frankly, productivity when we are able to utilize a detective that can lend to security needs of the parks, but also attend to the increased and sustained demand for erase services.
Okay, but we have right now officers in the Parks Department who carry guns and handle all the security, correct?
That is correct. In
Right.
each of the parks, we have one. Actually, Davis Camp does have two post officers.
Now, this person that you're talking about split funding, he's not going to be making more money than our quote-unquote police officers in the park, is he?
Well, we, Supervisor Johnson, we would bring that deputy in at the requisite pay range and step coincident to the other erase detectives.
Right, but you're talking about a race and you're calling the guy, the part that I'm having a problem with, you're calling him a detective over there. We don't need detectives in the park department. We need patrolmen to come in and help security, and when they can't handle it or make arrests, they call the sheriff's department and they do the investigation, everything. This guy's not going to be coming over and making more money than the guys that are doing the same job, is he?
Well, in essence, the erase officer, if you will be placed at the range as the other two erase officers that are on staff. How that relates to our park superintendent, I do believe our park superintendent is at a higher range. Even our assistant park superintendent is probably at the same range as the erase officers themselves. So we're looking at a level of equity there. But the half-funded erase officer would be then available to be part-time assigned as necessary to the parks just for additional security support on the high demand.
Maybe I'm not being clear. The security guy at the park we're talking about.
Yes.
Okay. He's not a park superintendent, right? He's just a patrolman or whatever we call him. We hire these guys, park security.
Yes, they're just largely hired security details.
Now, he will be paid the same as that detective or not?
Well, that would be an outside service, so we contract for those services as necessary. We're hoping to lessen the need for that type of service if we have a more in-house supply of resources to provide that enforcement on the high demand weekends.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
may I jump in?
Sure.
Coral, do you happen to have the range for this proposed position? And can you tell me what that is, please?
I don't see that the range is actually listed on here, but the budgeted amount is a rate of $22.58 an hour is what would be budgeted.
I think to move the discussion forward, I will say if that is what the proposed range is, I want to make sure it is the same, or I think the chairman is asking to make sure that that is the same as the two other officers that are part of the park system. If it isn't, then that is his point. So again, to move the discussion forward, if you're comfortable, Mr. Chairman, is to say we'll ensure that this position, if approved by the board, at the same level as the others. And if it's not, we owe it to you to come back to you and tell you it's not, and show you the difference between them, and maybe even explain why it is that we think it's different. That way you would be able to make an informed decision to either keep it or not.
All right, yeah, I think that handles that. Thank you. I didn't see anything in the budget, and I don't know if you want to bring it back or anything, but for upgrading the equipment in the boardroom. This is old equipment. We have trouble, like today, even with communications. I don't know if it's something you can bring back and see if the board's willing to pay for it, if there's funding for it or not. The same thing with doing the electronic signatures and things. The treasurer was talking about the sale of 6,000 pieces of property that all had to be hand signed by two different people. Then each had to be notarized. We have systems set up now for electronically that can be done. I think that maybe that's something you could bring back and just ask the board if it's something we want to, upgrade our systems to. Might be good.
Mr. Chairman, board members, thank you for, again, the opportunity to respond. We have been taking baby steps as far as updating the equipment here in the boardroom. like the cameras and such. The system in the back, I don't have the information on it. I'm looking in the audience to see if our IT director is here. I don't see him. So we owe it to you to follow up and explain to you what we're doing. And if we don't have a plan, the message is clear. We need to develop one and share it with the board and get some guidance and direction.
Are we planning on keeping the high ground services of $12,000 a month? Is that in the budget?
Mr. Chairman, board members, yes. If the board agrees, I would on this one perhaps also defer to Supervisor Linkenfelter, who was appointed by the board to lead the water discussion efforts. But the issues that we have had in the past that justified bringing that firm on board are still ongoing. We were hoping to have a resolution by now. They are a valuable support, and that's why we propose to include them, and that's why they're in the budget.
Okay, I guess from my point of view, since August of 17, we spent $372,000 on high ground, and I don't remember the last time I've had a report from them, or the board has had a report from them, but that's just something that I'm curious about. I guess the courts now, I have a few questions of the courts.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Thank you. And I don't know if you have this or not, but we're talking about the Justice Court. When are they going to be doing the judicial credits on that and the breakdowns? Do we know? Because we have to do a redistricting.
Chairman Johnson, I believe they do that on a yearly basis, and that's done through the Supreme Court. I could certainly follow up on that. Are you looking to see if there's been a change on?
Right, because we're going to have to be doing that with the redistricting. So, and from my understanding, especially with what the legislature's done this year, they seem to be taking away fines. So I'm guessing that judicial credits are going to drop way down, and especially with tickets and everything have dropped way off. So is that going to be a problem with the courts?
The precincts with respect to the justice courts do not necessarily change as, for example, the supervisorial districts change. With respect to the credits, those were already determined for this past year, and certainly the lack of tickets has affected that, but in the overall scheme of things, tickets do not necessarily equate to higher productivity numbers to begin with. For example, eviction filings would be a higher productivity rate than a simple traffic ticket. A traffic ticket is actually one of the lower rungs with respect to determining the judicial productivity credits.
But we had to split up the Kingman Court because they had so many tickets, which drove up their credits, so we had to make two courts.
That is correct, and that occurred many, 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 many years ago, and obviously, again, those each court is different when you look at the makeup of the filings, because again, I-40 certainly equates to far more tickets than, say, the Bullhead City Justice Court or the Lake Havasu Justice Court. Likewise, the tickets that are created on I-15 can help drive the judicial productivity credits in North Canyon. So it really changes from court to court.
Okay, but their salaries are dependent upon judicial credits, correct?
That is correct.
Okay,
we
now,
did make a modification several years ago when Tom Brady was the Bullhead Justice of the Peace. They did a modification because his numbers were increasing, and I believe it was the Oatman area that we added to the Lake Havasu. It also kind of helped from the standpoint that it literally put all of I-40 in the Lake Havasu precinct, because what was occurring is that if someone was actually traveling eastbound on I-40, they should have been in Havasu. If they were traveling on westbound, they should have been in the Bullhead, and that didn't necessarily happen with respect to, DPS and when they turned around and would ticket someone. So that did help stabilize some judicial productivity credits as well as filings.
Okay, why do you think that, or why do the justice courts think we should pick up the pro tems if they're not making any money and their income has gone down? Why do we have to pick it up? Shouldn't they just cut some of the pro tems?
A lot of the issue with the pro tems literally is the fact that the justice court is a court of 365 days a year. If someone is arrested, they have to be seen by a judge within 24 hours of the actual arrest if they're going to be incarcerated. So we have to have pro tems on the weekends.
Don't we call out the pro tems, or they just don't come in and sit there for 8 hours? Or
Oh no, the pro tems are scheduled as far as the weekends are concerned. However, the justice court has to provide those services on the weekends. It's a mandatory. It's a must.
I understand that, but aren't they on call? They don't come. Because it could be 24 hours a day.
Well, there are other people that are pro tems are on call. For example, if someone is on vacation, or if someone turns around and is at a COJED, a continuing judicial education training, then you have to have your pro tems come in then as well.
How many pro tems we have?
Well, I apologize. I don't think I can answer that off the top of my head. I know we have at least 3 or 4 for the Kingman area. I believe there's 2 or 3 in Bullhead, and I think there's at least 2, maybe 3 in Lake Havasu as well.
The numbers have gone down then for Justice Court. There used to be a lot of pro tems.
Yeah. They continue to do recruitments to try to keep enough available out there. They schedule them for the weekend, so they're scheduled Saturday and Sunday. It's a regular schedule we're in. We have security there. We have staff there. Regular scheduled. And new Justice of the Peace Tennell wanted me to make sure to let you know, Supervisor Johnson, that this is important to her. So if I can add that little.
She said the JPs are.
No, I'm just teasing. Just teasing.
Now, on your commissioners, we talked about comparing them with other counties. Do other counties make these people lifetime judges?
Many of them are. In fact, most of I shouldn't say most, a good percentage, for example, in Maricopa County that are commissioners ultimately end up being appointed by the governor as divisional judges. Most of the counties, the rural counties, the pro tems literally end up being elected or appointed depending upon the situation with an individual judge. That is certainly not an uncommon practice. What is an uncommon practice is that here in Mojave County, we start our pro tems out at 80%, whereas other counties across the state start their pro tems at 90% of the judge's salary. We're very conservative and we're very frugal with respect to our budget, but they have been, in these positions for years and years at 80%, 85%, and it is just simply that time where we need to increase them and bring them up to speed.
Are you talking about pro tems or the commissioners themselves?
The commissioners. Well, we have commissioner pro tems.
Right, but I'm talking about just the commissioners, the one that. How many do we have now in Mojave County?
4. We have one that is Fill the Gap funded, which is state funded. We have another that is primarily funded, again, through 4D and 4E monies. We have utilized as much state monies as possible with respect to the pro tem commissioners, because they are both pro tems and commissioners. If they are only commissioners, they cannot handle jury trials, and that's why we make them pro tems and commissioners. And we have two others that are primarily county funded.
Right, but those people, I guess what I'm getting at is we appoint these people as commissioners, and they never stand for election, but yet they go through the system and can retire.
Well, once again, many of them do apply for positions. For example, we have had Judge Carlisle, Judge Jansen, who else has come up? Judge Chavez came up this way as a pro tem. Judge Moon came up this way as a pro tem. Ultimately, I was a pro tem and was elected. There are many pro tems that actually do end up becoming elected and or appointed.
Right, no, correct, you were a pro tem. You weren't a commissioner, though.
Correct.
Full-time commissioners, and they kind of just stay there.
Yeah, and we do reviews. I mean, these people, as pro tems and commissioners, they continue on at the pleasure of the presiding judge. If they're not performing, we can remove them. But we have had very high-performing commissioners and pro tems.
Okay, the bailiffs you're talking about, why do we need a virtual bailiff?
Well, we are currently doing a pilot program that the Supreme Court has approved. We are the only court in the state that is doing fully remote civil jury trials. We are going to be we've established the program. I will be issuing the administrative order hopefully within the next week. People will not have to travel to Kingman to sit on jury service with respect to these remote jury trials. Judge Jansen's division will be the division that will be assigned to handle this. The Supreme Court has instituted the case lines application. This is a fully digital evidence platform. In other words, we are no longer bringing in, here's the document, here is the bumper to the car. Now it's all digital. It's an entirely remote courtroom. And we need to have an individual that would be trained with respect to being able to handle the issues that arises. I mean, when you have a jury that is appearing remotely, as an example, when they go off into deliberations, they can only deliberate. There should be no one else that is present or can hear what they are deliberating over. To have the remote capability of providing them digital evidence as they're deliberating, we need Exhibit 47. Fine, we'll provide you Exhibit 47, but yet we cannot hear what their discussion is with respect to Exhibit 47.
We talked before, and you're talking about your remote courts. Are we going to be able to subsidize those with, or is it even going to be possible to bring in traveling judges to get you up to date with your cases?
Well, that is another reason why the Supreme Court wants us to do this pilot. We have no available courtrooms. However, if we're able to bring in retired judges or visiting judges and do it remotely, we do not necessarily need to have a courtroom, because if we bring in a visiting judge, that means another judge is either going on vacation or having to work out of chambers, because we do not have the courtroom space yet. And we won't have the courtroom space until we complete the renovation of the historic courthouse. But yes, the whole idea and the concept is that we would, if necessary, utilize retired and or visiting judges with respect to our backlog. And it would probably be retired judges because, to be frank with you, every county in the state has a backlog. I mean, currently, the criminal judges anticipate that they have between 30 to 40 pending criminal jury trials at any given time. And the reason it's 30 to 40 is from the standpoint that, okay, you're scheduled for trial in 2 weeks, but lo and behold, you reach a deal. So you can't give a firm number, but that is, and obviously matters come on and are ready for trial, so you have that give and take.
Do you have money in the budget that you've proposed to handle traveling judges if for some reason we're able to, like with if Havasu gets their courtroom built, we're going to have an extra courtroom down there?
Yes, we have.
Have we looked at, or is it possible for us to maybe move to night court with some of these handled?
Move to a night court?
Yes.
That would be very difficult, especially with respect to jury trials. You can't really ask people to sit on a jury that might start at, say, 3 in the afternoon and go until 9 or 10 o'clock at night. That would be very difficult.
But we couldn't move any of the daytime stuff around, like with the people who are appearing for just their initial court appearance and those things, to have the sheriff's department bring them over and they do them after 5 or 6 or whatever, just to free up a courtroom? No? I'm just quite curious on that.
I suppose it is conceivable that, I think we'd have to turn around and take a look and discern which courts would benefit the most, whether I would assume it would probably have to be a criminal division of the court. That would make more sense.
And that's all I had. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
I have no further questions. Is there anybody else from the board that has questions? Supervisor Bishop.
So far, nobody's mentioned the fairgrounds. I'm just wondering if we need to be considering a budget for the fairgrounds since we're taking over management of it.
Any manager elders?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Bishop, we were directed 3 days ago to come up with a plan and come back in August. It's clear that the plan would have, as I stated at the time, we would project a budget and needs and such. I think this will have to be, this will have to fall in the part that Coral talked about, where between today and the preliminary budget in June, we would have to arrive to some at least preliminary budget numbers that we can put in front of you. But as of today, I'm sorry, I just don't have anything because we just received the board direction to proceed in that way. So
Yeah,
we will have
I
to
do
come
understand
back.
that. I just wanted to call attention to the fact that as this progresses through the tentative budget and then the final budget, we need to be considering that. And in closing, I just want to say that I really appreciate all the work that the management team has done on presenting this budget. I like the idea of being able to reduce the property tax rate by 36 cents over 4 years. That sounds very intriguing to me, and if we can do that, I would certainly support a 1/4 cent sales tax. So thank you very much for all of your hard work, and we'll begin picking this apart, and I'm sure we'll come up with a fantastic budget.
Supervisor Angus, do you have any further questions?
No, I don't.
Supervisor Gould. I guess in conclusion, I don't know how you're going to do it, but I would probably be coming back to board members with a budget that does not include the 1/4 cent sales tax before you submit a preliminary, so we have a chance to look at it. If nothing else, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.